another interesting thing that I noticed that is that the people and the media outlet in the Eastern Bloc, like Poland and the countries who once experienced communism and who finally overcame the communism, they have a deeper understanding about our struggle, and they're more sympathetic and more understanding of our cause. But the people who happen to be in the more well-developed or Western leading nations, they're kind of like indifferent. They didn't know what we're going through. It's like, the eve before the fall of the Berlin Wall. People still are ignorant about what's happening. Right now, there are hundreds of millions of Chinese people standing up to communism. And that's a great historical moment that we're seeing. The Chinese Berlin Wall is collapsing, but most of the people in the Western, most developed nation, they're sleeping. They're not recognizing something big is happening. So my question is that how do we wake up those sleeping people?
I think by doing what you're doing and continue to do it. Look, what is so powerful about G News and the other outlets that Miles has helped people form, Getter, G News, New Federal State, these are platforms. These are platforms that allow the average person to be extraordinary. The ordinary person to do extraordinary things. These are platforms. And that's, I just think, if let's keep doing it. Remember, every day that you guys work, whether it's the Rule of Law Society, the Rule of Law Foundation, New Federal State, the whistleblower movement, every day you're showing people something, a new China and a new Chinese. And it's so powerful. And the Chinese Communist Party, the firewall that they built with Western technology, the social credit score that they built with Western technology, the suppression of the Chinese people, the everything to do with the virus and the pandemic, you can tell they're starting to come apart. And they're coming apart because of the relentless, Miles and the people, the fighters throughout the world of the different farms, all that just every day continue to do it. It's that momentum and it's that scale and critical mass that will eventually bring down the CCP. So what I tell people is just continue to do what you do every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you because almost everyone we spoke on the border, whether they come from Germany, Italy, or Ukraine, I mean, they are so amazed to know that there's a massive Chinese whistleblower movement taking down the world's largest and most monstrous dictatorship. Yet they have heard nothing from the mainstream media, but they were so happy to see us face to face. So they were shocked. And so that confirmed their disbelief in the so-called mainstream leading media because they felt like, that they have been blocked, by these mainstream or the legacy mainstream media to a very important, history-changing, event. So yeah, I totally agree with you. And many people have been asking us, how do we follow the Chinese whistleblower movement? How do I follow the new federal state of China? And many people started downloading the Getter. They're asking about the G News. And in fact, these people were, they believe that taking down the Chinese Communist Party should not be a task only to the Chinese people because they felt the influence of the Chinese Communist Party infiltrating in their own country, in their own society. I met people from Africa. They talk about the One Belt, One Road, and people in Netherlands, in UK, in Germany, they talk about the Confucius Institute. They talk about the Chinese money, the Chinese government's investment in their own country. So people felt they have been, threatened by the Chinese Communist Party. So they felt very compelled to join the people from the new federal state of China to take down the Chinese Communist Party. So I think that's the biggest finding I have learned from my experience of the last 2 months here working at the border.
Let me add one other, as someone that watches the videos and the live streams, is that, remember, and this is what, let's get back to what Miles talks about all the time, a new China and a new Chinese. You are, and always remember this, for the new federal state and for the whistleblower movement and for the rule of law, in the Miles movement, when you're meeting Westerners, remember, most of the time it's either the first Chinese person they've ever met, or it's definitely the first Chinese person they've ever met that's not been controlled by the CCP. Remember, people that are controlled by the CCP, it's not their fault. That's a control mechanism. It's formed them into something else. It's formed them into an agent of the state. So everything that they do is not for the good of humanity or even for themselves. It's for state-controlled power. And that makes people very weary. And that's sometimes you see that people just don't, what are the Chinese doing? You are ambassadors for a new China that's going to be here for thousands of years. And you're at the very tip of the spear. You're at the very forefront of that movement. You're at the very vanguard of that. And that's why when you present yourself, and it's so moving to see what's happening at the border because of the giving and the love and to no benefit to yourselves, right? That's a very tough location to be. You guys are doing incredible. You're not having the media all over you telling your heroes because they're suppressing it, right? So you're doing it really for the greatest of the Christian values. Remember, Christ says, no man has greater love than would lay down his life or give his life or giving in his life for his fellow man, particularly people that are not your kin, that are not related to you, that are not even from your race or ethnicity or your country. Essentially, white people who are part Russian and part Polish, living in war-torn Ukraine. That's the power of what's happening at the border now. It's incredible. But that little seed is going to grow into a massive oak, a mighty oak, and that's why it's so important just to do it every day. So no, you're changing minds, and you're changing people's understanding of really of the great power of true Chinese civilization, not the bastardization of it that's happened under the brutal dictatorship of the Chinese Communist Party.